To the outside world, I had it together. 31 years old, co-owner of a mid-sized property management firm my father built from nothing in Mississauga, two kids in a good school in Oakville, and a husband who everyone at the holiday party called the perfect guy. I used to believe that too. I really did. The morning everything changed, I was running late. My husband, I'll call him my husband because that's what he still was, legally on that day, had asked me to stop by the Sheraton on Highway 10 because we managed three of their corporate suites, and there was a contract renewal I needed to sign in person. I'd barely slept. My youngest had an ear infection, and I'd been up past 2 with him. I had a Tim Hortons in one hand, my bag over my shoulder, and I was already answering emails on my phone when I pushed through the lobby doors. That's when I felt it, something warm and wet hitting the side of my face and pouring down onto my blazer. I stopped walking. I looked down at the brown streak running from my shoulder to the hem of my jacket. Then I looked up. She was young, maybe 24, wearing a pencil skirt and heels that were slightly too high for someone who hadn't learned yet how to walk in them. She had that particular kind of confidence that belongs to people who've never been told no in a way that stuck. She was already pulling her hand back, the paper cup still in it, looking at me with an expression that wasn't apologetic at all. It was almost annoyed, like I'd walked into her. "You should watch where you're going," she said. I looked at her for a moment. I was still holding my own coffee. I set it down on the reception counter beside me, very slowly, because I needed my hands to stop shaking, and I wasn't sure yet if they would. "I'm sorry," I said. She tilted her head. "I said, you should watch where you're going. Some of us are actually working here." The lobby wasn't empty. Two hotel staff were behind the desk. A man in a suit was waiting for an elevator. A cleaning attendant had paused with his cart. Everyone had gone very still in that particular way. People go still when they sense something is about to happen and aren't sure yet if they should intervene. "I don't believe we've met," I said. "I'm here for a contract meeting. Suite management. Are you at the hotel?" She laughed. It was a short, dismissive sound. "I'm the new hospitality coordinator. I started last month, and honestly, you should probably just leave your documents at the front desk. My fiancé handles all the ownership decisions here, and I'll make sure he gets them." I kept my expression neutral. Years of managing contractors, tenants, and the particular specific hell of family business had trained me for this. "Your fiancé?" I repeated. "Yes." She straightened slightly, and there it was, the posture of someone about to play the card they think ends the conversation. "He's the managing partner, Adrian Kowalski. So if you need anything signed, you can go through me." The lobby was still quiet. Someone coughed near the elevators. I took a breath through my nose. My blazer was ruined. The coffee had soaked through to my shirt. I could feel it cooling against my ribs. And this woman who had just doused me in coffee and barely apologized, was standing there telling me to route my paperwork through her because she was sleeping with my husband. My husband, who had told me that morning he had back-to-back calls until noon and couldn't drop the kids off. My husband, who I had built this company alongside for 7 years, who had been a junior partner when I brought him in, who now had his name on the letterhead next to mine. I reached into my bag and I took out my phone. I found his number. I pressed call. And while it rang, I looked at her and I smiled. Not a mean smile, just a small, tired, completely certain one. And I said, "Let's get him down here then." She blinked. "What?" "You said he handles ownership decisions. Let's get him down here. I think it's time everyone met properly." He picked up on the third ring. His voice was relaxed, casual. The voice of a man who believed he was in control of his own timeline. "Hey, I'm kind of in the middle of something." "I know," I said. "I'm in the lobby of the Sheraton on Highway 10. Your fiancé just spilled coffee on me. You should come down." Silence. Not the silence of confusion, the silence of a man recalculating. "I'll wait," I said, and I hung up. She was staring at me now. Something had shifted in her face. The certainty had cracked just slightly at the edges, the way ice sounds before it goes. "Who are you?" she asked. I'm Nora Kowalski, I said, his wife, and the majority shareholder of the company he manages. He came down in 4 minutes. I know because I watched the elevator numbers. I'd moved to one of the lobby chairs, not out of weakness, but because my knees were honestly not cooperating, and I'd found the cleaning attendant and apologized for the mess and asked if he had anything I could use to blot the blazer. And he'd brought me a clean cloth and I'd said thank you and meant it. My husband walked out of the elevator and across the lobby, and his eyes found me first. Then hers, then mine again. He'd always been good-looking in that low-maintenance way some men are. Tall, dark-haired, the kind of face that reads as trustworthy at a business lunch. He was wearing the gray shirt I'd ironed 2 days ago. She moved toward him immediately. Adrian, I didn't know. Don't, he said, quietly but sharply. He looked at me. I looked at him. The whole lobby was a hell breath. Nora. Don't do that either, I said. Don't do the voice. We're not at home. I stood up, slowly. I came here to renew the suite contracts. Do you want to tell me what else I'm going to find out today? Or should I just have our lawyer make the calls? His jaw tightened. She was looking between us now with an expression that had moved through embarrassment and arrived somewhere closer to genuine shock. I didn't feel triumphant about it. I felt like someone had taken a handful of the last 7 years and shown me the underside, and it was nothing like what I thought it was. How long? I asked. He didn't answer. I'm asking you directly, Adrian. In a hotel lobby where you apparently felt comfortable enough to set her up as a coordinator, how long? 14 months, she said. She wasn't looking at me with malice anymore. She looked like someone who had been told a version of a story that was missing half its pages. He told me you were separated. The lobby was very quiet. We have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, I said to her. Not to hurt her, just because it was true and it needed to be in the air. We spent Christmas in Collingwood. We are not separated. She looked at him. He looked at the floor. The next part is the part people want to skip over because it's not dramatic. There's no screaming match, no slap, no one being escorted out by security. Though a manager had quietly appeared near the desk and was watching with the very specific alertness of someone calculating liability. What there was me sitting back down in that lobby chair calling my father and saying in a completely flat voice, Dad, I need you to call David Chen at the firm today. Tell him it's about the business partnership structure and that it's urgent. My father didn't ask questions. He never did when my voice was flat like that. He just said, I'll call him in the next 10 minutes, and hung up. My husband stood there. She stood apart from him now, which I noticed. You should go back upstairs, I told him. We'll do this through lawyers. Nora, please, if we could just. Adrian, I looked at him steadily. Go back upstairs. He went. What came after was long, and it was not pretty, and some of it I still don't entirely have language for. My lawyer, a compact, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Park, who wore the same 3 blazers in rotation and never once expressed surprise at anything, walked me through what the partnership structure meant, what the assets looked like, and what my options were. My name was on the original incorporation documents. My father had transferred his shares to me 2 years before he retired. I held 58% of the company. Adrian was a managing partner by agreement, not by ownership. Ms. Park said the words leverage and straightforward in the same sentence, and for the first time in 3 weeks, I slept through the night. The girl, her name I eventually learned, was Haley, and she was 23, not 24, had not known I existed as a current wife. I believe that. I don't say it to be generous. I say it because people lie to the people they want things from, and he'd wanted something from her too. She wasn't innocent, but she also wasn't the architect. When she found out the truth, she moved back to her parents' place in Guelph within the week. I know because my cousin works at the same gym as her mother. This is Ontario. Everything is connected. Adrian hired his own lawyer. He made noises about contesting the business structure. Ms. Park sent 2 emails. He stopped making noises. But here's the part I think about most. Now, When it's late and the kids are in bed and the house is quiet in that way, it gets when you're the only adult in it. 3 weeks after the lobby. When I was at my lowest, the kind of low where you're functional during the day and then you sit on the bathroom floor at 11 at night because the tiles are cold and cold is the only thing that feels real. My phone lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. Hey, this is Jonah. I know it's out of nowhere. I heard through your dad that things have been rough. If you want to grab a coffee sometime, no pressure. I'm around. Jonah Breckenridge. We met at the Ryerson alumni thing in 2019. You probably don't remember me. I did remember him, quiet, thoughtful, laughed at the right moments, had asked genuinely good questions at a panel I'd been on about women in commercial real estate. I remembered thinking, vaguely, on the drive home, that was a person who actually listens. And then I gone home and made dinner and not thought about it again. I sat on the bathroom floor and I read the message 3 times. Then I set the phone face down on the tile and I let myself cry for about 10 minutes. Really cry, not the controlled, managed kind. And when I was done, I felt emptied out in the way that's actually closer to clean than to broken. I messaged back, just, I remember you. Yeah, coffee would be good. It took 8 months to finalize everything. The company stayed in my name. The house in Oakville stayed with me and the kids. Adrian moved into a condo in Burlington, and we built the kind of civil-only co-parenting arrangement that Ms. Bell Olney's co-parenting arrangement, parts paralegal described as unusually cooperative, which I think means neither of us had the energy for war. Haley, from what I understood, was doing okay. That mattered to me more than I expected it to. She'd been lied to. She was 23, and she'd been handed a story that suited someone else's needs. I wasn't going to spend energy hating her. I had a company to run, and 2 kids who needed their mother to be someone they could be proud of. My youngest started calling Jonah the tall guy before he started calling him anything else. My oldest, who is 7 and operates entirely on the logic of fairness, asked him once at dinner, without preamble, "Do you think it's okay to lie to people?" Jonah put his fork down and thought about it for a genuine moment and then said, "No. I think it almost always makes things worse, even when you think you're protecting someone." My son nodded like this was the correct answer, which apparently it was, and went back to his pasta. I watched that exchange from across the table with the November dark pressed against the kitchen window and the overhead light making everything warm and small and contained, and I felt something I didn't quite have a name for yet. Not happiness, exactly. More like the return of something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The particular feeling of being in a room where no one is performing anything, where everyone is just there. Jonah looked up and caught me watching him. He didn't make a thing of it. He just smiled. A small, undemonstrative, entirely real smile, and passed me the salad. I'd spent 7 years learning to look for the cracks in everything, checking and double-checking, bracing for the thing I hadn't anticipated. That night, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for anything. I was just there too. I still think about that cleaning attendant sometimes. The one who brought me the cloth in the lobby, he didn't have to do that. He could have kept his head down and pushed his cart past the whole mess. Instead, he stopped, and he helped, and he asked for nothing. I don't know his name, but I think about him when I'm trying to remember what it actually looks like to be a decent person. Not in a grand public way, but in the quiet, unremarkable way that doesn't get recorded anywhere. Adrian made choices that had consequences. That's not complicated. He lied to me, he lied to Haley, and eventually those 2 lies found each other in a hotel lobby in Mississauga, and the whole architecture collapsed. I don't believe in punishment handed down from somewhere above. I believe in the more mundane truth that dishonesty creates structural instability, and structures that aren't sound eventually fail. That's not fate. That's just cause and effect, playing out the way it always does when you cut corners in the foundation. What I had to figure out, and this took longer than I'd like to admit, a lot of bathroom floor nights, a lot of drives home from school pickup where I held it together until the kids were unbuckled and then sat in the driveway for 10 extra minutes, was that the collapse wasn't only his doing. I'd been paying attention to the wrong things. I was watching the business, watching the kids, watching the calendar, and I had stopped watching my own life. I'd outsourced my instincts. Every time something felt slightly off, I'd reasoned myself out of it, told myself out of it, told myself I was tired or overthinking. There's a kind of intelligence that goes dormant when you're afraid of what it might tell you. Waking that back up was some of the hardest work I've ever done. And then there's what came after. The part that surprised me most wasn't the divorce, wasn't the legal process, wasn't even learning to be the only adult in the house at night. It was the discovery that I was still standing. That after something that was supposed to break me, I was still making lunches and chairing meetings and having actual opinions about things. The capacity to keep going, not cheerfully, not without grief, but steadily, one day adding up to the next, turns out to be something you find out about yourself only by being asked to use it. I didn't know I had it. I know now. Haley was 23. I've thought about her more than I expected to. She made choices I didn't like, but she was also handed a story that wasn't true by someone who understood exactly how to use a young person's hope against them. I don't think letting go of the anger toward her made me weak. I think it was the only version of the situation that allowed me to remain someone my kids could look up to. When my oldest asked Jonah whether it was okay to lie to people, and Jonah put his fork down and actually thought about it, that moment mattered to me more than almost anything that happened in a courtroom. Because that's what I want my kids to see, people who take the questions seriously, people who've decided without making a performance of it, that the way you behave when no one's watching is still the way you behave. That's not a lesson I could have taught them while I was busy looking the other way in my own life. I had to lose something to find that. I'd rather not have lost it. But here we are.